Welcome to the Deep Dive, the shortcut to being well-informed. Okay, let's unpack this. Has anyone ever told you, that you learn best if information is strictly tailored to your specific style?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you've even identified yourself, or someone else has said, oh, you're a visual person, you need diagrams, or you're auditory, you only learn by listening.
Yeah, it feels really intuitive, doesn't it? That idea that we each have a sort of fixed type.
It's so compelling.
It is. And this concept of fixed learning styles, it's incredibly popular. These styles, they're usually defined as like preferred ways of taking in, processing, and remembering information.
Right, and often categorized by models like VARK.
Exactly, VARK. That's visual, auditory, reading, writing, and kinesthetic. That's the big one usually.
The examples are everywhere, aren't they? You picture the visual learner needing that, detailed chart for sentence structure.
Yeah, or the kinesthetic learner who has to maybe walk around or role play something new to really make it stick. And the core belief, the sort of foundational idea of the learning styles theory, is that if we can just identify a student's style and then perfectly match how we teach to that style, then boom, better learning, better grades, deeper retention. That's the promise.
But today, we're diving into material that, it kind of takes a wrecking ball to that intuitive feeling.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Our mission here is to move beyond just preference, what feels comfortable, and actually look at what works. We're going to tackle that central belief in fixed learning styles and then pivot towards strategies that are, scientifically proven, adaptable, strategies you really need for high-level mastery.
Especially for something complex, like reaching, say, C2 language proficiency.
Exactly. So get ready for maybe some aha moments about how your brain really processes new information.
Okay, so where should we start? I think we have to begin with the VARK model itself, right? Since it's the most common frame people use.
Good call. So for anyone unfamiliar, V is for visual, that preference for charts, graphs, seeing things laid out spatially.
Right. Then A is auditory, learning best through lectures, discussions, podcasts maybe, basically sound.
Got it, hearing it. RW.
Reading.
Right.
Reading. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Engaging deeply with text, notes, definitions, people who like words on a page.
Okay. And K.
Kinesthetic. That's learning through physical experience, movement, hands-on practice doing things.
Okay. So that's the model people often think of.
Yeah. But here's where it gets, as you said, really interesting. Despite how just pervasive this model is, the overwhelming scientific consensus from literally decades of educational research is that there's a critical lack of strong empirical evidence supporting the idea that matching teaching styles to these preferred learning styles actually improves student outcomes.
That's kind of astonishing.
Yeah.
So even if I feel like I learn best when I see a diagram, the data doesn't actually show that diagram leads to better long-term memory of the concept compared to, having to explain it out loud.
Precisely. Empirical evidence needs, observation and experiment that reliably shows better outcomes. And when researchers have specifically tested this meshing hypothesis, the idea that aligning style and instruction boosts learning, the results they haven't consistently shown a reliable positive effect. It mostly fails.
I remember reading about a big review, Patzler, back in 2008 that came up in the sources.
Yes, that was a highly influential review. They looked right at this body of research, and their conclusion was pretty stark.
What did they find?
Basically that there is no adequate evidence base to justify using these style assessments as a core part of general educational practice.
Okay, so that brings us to the really crucial distinction here. This is what we want you, listening, to really take away.
Go on.
Preference is real. You might genuinely enjoy listening to a lecture more than reading a dense textbook. That feeling is valid.
Absolutely. We all have preferences.
But, and this is the key preference, does not reliably equal effectiveness. Liking a method isn't the same thing as that method guaranteeing deeper learning or, better results down the line.
And maybe even more importantly, sticking rigidly to what you think is your fixed preferred style, it often leads to avoidance.
How so?
Well, if you decide I'm purely a visual learner, you might actively avoid vital speaking practice in a language, right? Because it doesn't fit your label.
Okay. And that limits your adaptability.
Exactly. It limits the very flexibility you need for real mastery.
So if these rigid labels don't actually work or aren't the key factor, we need flexibility, we need strategy. What's the scientifically supported path forward then?
Okay, the path forward is really about embracing adaptability and context dependence. We need to stop asking, what kind of learner am I?
Right.
And start asking, what kind of strategy does this specific material or this specific goal demand?
Okay, strategy number one that the source is really highlighted, which directly counters those fixed styles, is multimodal learning.
Yes. Multimodal learning. It sounds fancy, but it just means using several different senses and forms of communication to engage with whatever you're learning.
So not just sticking to one lane.
Not at all. For any complex task, but especially something like language acquisition, the research strongly suggests a multimodal approach is way better. Using reading, listening, speaking, writing, maybe even watching videos.
All together, yeah.
Yeah, rather than rigidly sticking to just one supposed style.
That makes intuitive sense too, actually. If I'm learning, say, a new French phrase, I'm not just listening to it auditory, I'm probably looking at the spelling, visual reading. Maybe I'm using my hand to write it down.
Kinesthetic.
And saying it out loud.
Right, using my mouth to pronounce it. Kinesthetic auditory. So I'm hitting it from like 4 different angles.
And engaging multiple senses like that creates multiple pathways in the brain, richer connections, more distributed. It's like using all the tools in the toolbox, as you said earlier.
Okay, so multimodal is key. What's next? Strategy 2, we move to something really practical from learning design. Cognitive load theory, CLT.
Cognitive load. Okay, I've heard of this. It's about working memory, right? Our brain's temporary processing space being limited.
Exactly. Working memory is the model, Nick. So the question becomes, how do we design learning experiences or materials so we aren't constantly overwhelming that limited capacity with mental noise?
Right. Distractions that aren't actually helping you learn the core thing.
Precisely. CLT talks about managing different types of load. The one we often need to minimize is extraneous load.
Extraneous load.
This is the unnecessary stuff, the distracting elements that don't actually contribute to understanding the core concept, but still eat up your precious mental bandwidth.
Can you give us a concrete example, maybe in language study?
Sure. Okay, imagine making flashcards for tricky vocabulary words. The intrinsic load is just how hard the word itself is.
Okay.
The germane load is the useful mental work, like thinking up example sentences or connecting it to other words. That's good load. But if your flashcard uses like 7 different crazy fonts, a bright, totally unrelated background picture, and the definition is split across 3 tiny bullet points, all that visual clutter, that's extraneous load. Your brain has to waste energy filtering out the noise instead of focusing on the actual word and its meaning.
Ah, okay. So effective learning is often about simplification, ruthless focus.
A lot of the time, yes. Less fluff, more focus. Efficient design matters.
It's a huge takeaway right there.
Yeah.
Okay, and this leads us to strategy 3, metacognition. Sounds a bit academic, but it's basically thinking about your own thinking.
Exactly. Metacognition is the skill of being aware of your own learning process, monitoring your understanding, evaluating if your strategies are working, and then adjusting your approach as you go.
It's the total opposite of just passively accepting a fixed style label.
Completely. It's active, it's reflective.
But how does someone start doing that if they've always just thought, oh, I'm bad at grammar, or I'm just not a numbers person?
You start by building a feedback loop. Okay, so a passive learner might say, I failed that vocabulary quiz because I'm just bad at memorizing. End of story.
Right, a fixed mindset.
Yeah, a metacognitive learner says, okay, I failed the vocab quiz. What did I do? I tried reviewing the list just once, right before bed. Clearly that didn't work.
Okay, analyzing the process.
Exactly. Wait, I remember last week, I actually learned those words pretty well when I used that app with the spaced repetition, reviewed them 3 times across the day. Okay, I need to adjust. I'll go back to that strategy. It's this cycle. Plan, monitor, evaluate, adjust. Flexible, informed self-correction.
So metacognition is about actively choosing the right strategy for the right material at the right time.
You got it.
Which brings us nicely to the ultimate goal for many language learners, C2 mastery. What strategies are absolutely mandatory when you're aiming that high?
That's the perfect transition because C2 proficiency, it really demands you move way beyond just casual comfort or basic communication.
It's not just more words, right?
No, not at all. It's about achieving a much higher level of precision and nuance, as the frameworks say, and being able to elaborate on any topic spontaneously, fluently, in pretty much any situation.
And specifically for listening skills, the C2 bar is incredibly high. The sources mentioned needing to fully understand, really demanding stuff.
Oh, yeah. Things like specialized academic lectures, complex films, long radio broadcasts, material that features abstract ideas, analysis, argumentation.
Supported opinions, hypotheses.
Exactly. It's complex thought expressed through language.
And it goes beyond just the literal meaning, too, doesn't it? C2 listening is about picking up the subtleties.
Absolutely critical. You have to have the sophisticated listening skills to appreciate all the hidden layers, the humor, the irony, sarcasm.
Ooh, sarcasm's a tough one.
It is. And implied meaning, generally. Stuff that only really comes across when you capture the speaker's tone, their attitude, all the nuances in how they say things.
Okay, so to process that much subtlety, especially at speed, those core listening skills need to be almost automatic. We need to break down what effective listening actually involves. The sources mentioned 4 key subskills. First one, predicting.
Right. Predicting is basically using context, your background knowledge, everything you already know, to anticipate what's likely to come next.
Priming the brain.
Exactly. If you hear a news headline about, I don't know, a local election, your brain immediately starts anticipating words like ballot, poll, candidate, turnout.
And that makes it easier to process the incoming speech.
Dramatically reduces the cognitive load. Yeah, you're already partly there.
Okay, second subskill, listening for gist.
This is the basic level, just getting the overall topic, the general idea, like listening to a weather forecast just to know if it's going to rain. You don't need the exact dew point.
Just the main message. Got it. Third,
listening for key information. This is more surgical. You tune out the background noise and focus only on extracting specific, crucial details.
like listening to a station announcement just for the platform number.
Perfect example. Or the gate number for a flight, ignoring everything else.
And the fourth one, which sounds crucial for C2, listening for detailed understanding.
This is the deep dive of listening. In-depth, comprehensive understanding. You're not just getting the topic. You're capturing the speaker's precise opinions, their subtle qualifications, their attitude, the flow of their argument, all of it.
So listening to a debate, you need this to really judge who's making the better points.
Absolutely. You need to track the nuances of their reasoning and evidence.
Okay. And how does the brain actually do all this processing? The sources mentioned 2 main ways, often working together.
Yeah, we use both bottom-up and top-down processing.
Bottom-up. That sounds like starting from the basics.
It is. It's the decoding process. Recognizing the individual sounds, building them into syllables, then words, then phrases. You're constructing meaning from the raw auditory input.
Like correctly hearing the difference between 60 and 16 in a price.
Exactly. That relies purely on accurately perceiving the sounds, the phonemes, the stress patterns, building from the bottom.
Okay, so what's top-down processing?
Top-down is using the bigger picture, your existing knowledge, the context, your expectations, even cultural understanding to help interpret the meaning. Especially useful when the sound itself is maybe unclear or ambiguous.
So it's like using context to fill in the gaps.
Precisely. It's about prediction and inference based on your world knowledge. Imagine listening to someone with a really strong accent and they say something that sounds like, the government needs to protect the whales.
Okay.
But if you know the whole conversation is about the economy and finance, your top-down processing uses that context to override the ambiguous sound. You realize they must have meant the banks.
Okay. Using the context to correct the perception. That's clever.
It's essential for fluent comprehension. Our brains do it constantly without us even noticing.
Which leads us straight into maybe the biggest hurdle for advanced learners, dealing with fast, natural, native speed English.
The bane of many learners' existence.
Right. And what's fascinating here, from the sources, is that the key isn't just trying harder to hear every single word.
No, absolutely not. That's often counterproductive.
We need to stop treating spoken English like it's just written English read aloud.
Yeah.
We need to train our ears for the actual structure of speech, the rhythm.
You've hit it exactly. English is what linguists call a stress-timed language.
Stress-timed. Okay, what does that mean in practice?
Well, unlike some languages, maybe like Spanish or French, where each syllable gets roughly equal time.
Syllable-timed languages.
Right. In English, we tend to place the main stress beats, the strong syllables, at roughly equal intervals in time, like a drum beat.
Yeah.
Which means everything between those main beats gets squeezed. The unstressed words and syllables get shortened, reduced, squished together to maintain that rhythm.
Ah, so that's why it sounds so fast and blurry sometimes.
But that's a huge part of it. So the absolute key to decoding fast speech is learning to recognize sentence stress. You need to identify which words are getting that main beat.
And which words usually get stressed?
It's the content words, the words carrying the core meaning. Nouns, main verbs, adjectives, adverbs. If you can pick those out,
You get the main idea.
you get the gist, yeah. You understand the core message, even if some smaller words get lost.
And what happens to all those other little words? The grammar words, articles, prepositions, auxiliary verbs, pronouns, conjunctions.
They're the casualties of stress timing. They almost always become weak forms. They get reduced.
Weak forms. Can you give examples?
Sure, take the word to. In isolation or stressed, it's to. But in a fast sentence like I want to go, you almost never hear to. You hear to, I want to go.
Right. Wanna.
Or and, not and, but nyan, fish and chips. Or can, often can instead of cane. I can help.
So if a learner is listening really hard, trying to hear the full, strong dictionary pronunciation of every single word,
They'll get completely overwhelmed. They'll fall behind instantly. You have to train your ear to accept these weak forms as normal and instead hunt for those stressed content words. That's where the meaning lies.
this shift in focus feels really critical. It's moving away from trying to decode, 30 individual sounds per second,
Yeah, impossible.
and instead learning to spot chunks.
Exactly. Listening for chunks. This is a game changer. A chunk is basically a group of words that often occur together.
Like set phrases.
Yeah, could be fixed idioms like a piece of cake, or common grammatical structures like I would have helped, or collocations like make a decision.
Okay.
And native speakers tend to learn and pronounce these chunks almost as single sound units. They flow together.
So they're not processed word by word by word.
Not usually, no. Think about I would have been there. We don't really hear that as 5 separate words. It often comes out sounding more like eat a bean there.
Wow.
One continuous, often kind of blurred sound package.
Right.
If you can train your ear to recognize I would have or going to go as one single sound unit when you hear it,
You process it much faster.
hugely faster. You're not solving a complex equation word by word anymore.
Right.
You're recognizing a familiar pre-packaged block of meaning.
Okay. Wow. So let's try and wrap this all up. We've covered a lot of ground today, from busting the myth of fixed learning styles all the way to the nitty-gritty mechanics of processing fast speech for C2 level listening.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey.
So what's a core conclusion, if you had to boil it down?
I think the core conclusion is this. True mastery, whether it's language or any really complex skill, it comes from being a flexible, adaptable learner, using multiple modes multimodal.
Right.
And being aware of your own learning metacognitive. It's never about having one fixed style that you're stuck with.
It's not about the label.
No, it's entirely about actively figuring out and deploying the right strategy for the specific thing you're trying to learn in that specific context.
And for high-level listening, a key part of that strategy is understanding technically how speech works. That stress timing, those weak forms, and training your ear to hunt for the meaning in the stressed words and the chunks.
Absolutely. If you stay passive, if you let yourself be defined by some supposed style, you are actively, maybe unknowingly, limiting your own growth potential.
Especially if that label makes you avoid things outside your comfort zone.
Exactly. The material showed that avoiding methods you don't prefer, like, say, avoiding speaking practice if you think you're just auditory, or avoiding reading if you think you're kinesthetic, that can be the single biggest roadblock.
It prevents you building that robust, adaptable skill set you need.
Precisely.
Okay, so final thought for everyone listening. Think about your own learning habits right now. Based on everything we've discussed today, debunking styles, embracing multimodal strategies, metacognition, adaptability, what is one learning method, one activity that you have perhaps actively avoided because it felt uncomfortable or didn't fit your perceived style?
Maybe it's forcing yourself to write summaries if you hate writing, or recording yourself speaking if you hate hearing your voice.
Yeah, exactly. What's that one thing you've been dodging? Could you, maybe next week, deliberately embrace that specific method? Try it out specifically to build a more flexible, powerful, and ultimately more effective approach to your learning.
That's a great challenge. Step outside the comfort zone.
Something to think about?
Yeah.
We definitely encourage you to keep exploring this topic on your own. Welcome back to The Deep Dive, the show where we take your sources, pull out the really key stuff, and basically give you a shortcut to being properly informed.
That's the goal.
Today, we are doing a bit of a cultural sprint, actually. A deep dive into modern American culture.
Yeah, and it's tricky because it's always shifting, isn't it? We're going way beyond, the usual tourist guides here. We're using the material you sent us to get to the heart of daily life, the big systems, and those generational differences that are really shaping the U.S. right now.
Right. So our mission today is really to give you, the listener, a practical handle on the social norms, which are changing super fast. We want to pin down what's normal, what's maybe financially risky, and what's causing some of the friction you see.
Exactly. It's less a fixed thing and more like a fast-moving current. You've got to adapt.
And to understand it, you need the context, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially behind those big systems. Plus, just how much daily life is run by tech and, well, what people expect as consumers.
Precisely. So where do we start?
Let's start where most people start their day, with their smartphone. And the whole culture of consumption that flows from it.
Okay, yeah. You really can't talk about daily life in the U.S. without putting technology front and center. Americans are, well, they're known for being early adopters, always wanting the newest phone, the latest app, like the minute it drops.
And Silicon Valley drives that engine, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Apple, Google, Meta. They're not just shaping the U.S., they're shaping global habits.
Absolutely. And this translates directly into, well, just functioning. Your smartphone isn't optional, it's essential. Navigation, paying for things, talking to people, watching stuff. It's everything.
You see it everywhere, people glued to their phones. But the etiquette is kind of specific.
It is. If you're talking to someone, like face-to-face, looking at your phone is definitely rude. A clear snub.
Right.
But if you're in a public space, not an active conversation waiting room, subway, queue, being totally absorbed in your phone is completely normal. Expected, even.
And these phones are the gateway, aren't they?
Yeah.
To Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, which are huge for news, for connecting, but also just sharing everything.
Oh, yeah. There's a really strong culture of sharing personal moments, what you had for breakfast, where you went on vacation, big life events.
Yeah.
It's all out there.
But you mentioned a balance. There's privacy awareness growing, too.
Definitely. That openness is real, but younger generations especially are getting much more savvy about, curating their digital footprint, thinking about what they put online, even while these platforms are still central to how they socialize and engage civically.
And that brings us to the digital divide.
Yeah.
You look at baby boomers born between 46 and 64 versus Gen Z born after 96. Their whole relationship with technology is worlds apart.
Oh, completely. And it causes real friction sometimes. Like a boomer might think a phone call is the proper, respectful way to discuss something important at work.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a Gen Z colleague might just fire off a quick text, maybe even use a meme or a GIF to get the tone across. The whole speed and formality expectation is just different.
Yeah.
Massively different.
And all this digital ease feeds right into the famous American shopping habit. Our sources basically call it a national pastime, this idea that buying stuff makes life better.
Yeah, that consumer culture belief is pushed hard. Advertising is just everywhere, all the time.
And it leads to these really intense shopping events, almost like rituals.
You mean like Black Friday?
Exactly. The day after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
People literally mapping out routes between stores, camping out sometimes. It's treated almost like a sport.
And now that same intensity is online with Cyber Monday. Companies like Amazon have just completely changed what people expect. Used to be 2-day shipping was amazing.
Right. Now it's same day or next day. And free, ideally.
Yeah, the bar keeps rising.
And maybe the best example of consumer power is the whole culture around returns.
Oh, absolutely. That's fundamental. It really underpins the whole customer is always right idea. Return policies in the U.S. are incredibly generous.
How generous are we talking?
Like 30, 60, sometimes even 90 days to return something. And often you can return it, even if you've used it, and as long as you have the receipt.
Wow. Even after using it.
Sometimes, yeah. That willingness to take the item back, it's kind of built into the price you pay, cementing that consumer power.
Okay, so speed, convenience, generous service.
Mm.
But let's pivot.
Mm-hmm.
Because that convenience and clarity, it seems totally absent in one critical area, healthcare.
Ah, yes. This is probably the most crucial thing to understand, especially regarding financial risk. American healthcare is mainly private. It's not free. It's not run by the government for everyone.
Most people get insurance through work, right?
Yeah.
But even then, it's expensive.
Exceptionally expensive. And just having insurance doesn't mean things are paid for. You've still got these hurdles.
Okay, so break down the key terms for our listener. Copay versus deductible.
Right. So a copay is usually a smaller fixed amount, say $20, maybe $50 that you pay each time you see a doctor or get a prescription. Simple enough.
Okay.
The deductible. That's the big one. That's the amount, often thousands of dollars, that you have to pay completely out of your own pocket before your insurance actually starts covering the main costs of your care.
Thousands. Before the insurance even kicks in.
Often, yes. And what's really striking, our material points out that many Americans don't even fully understand their own plans. They're that complex.
Does that complexity add to the financial danger?
Without a doubt. The confusion, combined with the high costs, it leads to some really shocking outcomes. Medical bills are, believe it or not, the #1 cause of personal bankruptcy in the U.S.
That's staggering. Can you give an example of the costs?
Sure. A basic visit to the emergency room, that can run into thousands of dollars. An ambulance ride, same thing, thousands.
Just for the ride.
Just for the ride. It's gotten so bad, the financial fear is so real that you actually hear stories, documented cases of people in an emergency choosing to get an Uber to the hospital instead of calling 911, just to avoid that ambulance bill.
Wow, that really shows the anxiety it creates. People avoiding care they need.
Exactly. That's a huge societal issue. People putting off doctor visits, even preventative stuff, because they're worried about the cost. Although there is some positive movement. Coverage for annual checkups is getting better, recognizing that prevention saves money in the long run.
But the bottom line for anyone listening who might visit or move there?
Absolutely crucial advice. Get good travel health insurance, really robust coverage. Because one serious medical event without it, you could be looking at tens of thousands of dollars in bills. It could wipe you out financially instantly.
Essential information. Okay, let's shift gears completely. Personal life, starting with dating, which, surprise, surprise, is dominated by tech now too.
Yeah, any old stigma about online dating is basically gone. Apps like Tinder, Bumble, Hinge. That's just how most people meet potential partners now. It's totally normal.
And the process, according to our sources, starts pretty casual. People often date more than one person at the beginning.
That's very common, yes. The initial phase is usually quite low-key, exploratory.
So how does that fit with, the American need for clarity you sometimes see?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to the talk.
Well, it makes the talk absolutely essential. Because it is casual at first, you have to have that direct conversation at some point. Are we exclusive? What are we? Are we boyfriend, girlfriend? You can't just assume. It has to be explicitly discussed and agreed upon to move from casual to committed.
Okay, clarity is key there. What about paying for dates? Always a bit awkward cross-culturally.
Yeah, the old tradition of the man always paying is definitely fading. It's much more common now to split the bill or maybe take turns paying. And that's usually figured out right there in the moment. Someone might just ask, hey, should we split this? Or you want to get this one, I'll get the next.
Makes sense. Okay, let's talk family structure. The big value seems to be independence, right? Even though you see all kinds of families.
Definitely. The nuclear family, parents and kids, is common, sure. But you see huge variety. Single-parent households, blended families from previous relationships, same-sex parents. Sometimes multiple generations under one roof, though that's less the norm.
But that independence value kicks in really young.
Oh, yeah. Little kids, maybe 5 or 6, are expected to have chores. Teenagers are strongly encouraged to get part-time jobs. And the big cultural ideal is moving out around 18 for college or just to live independently. It's seen as a really important step into adulthood.
But the economy is throwing a wrench in that ideal, isn't it? This boomerang effect.
Precisely. That's a major shift with things like huge student loan debts and the crazy high cost of housing. Way more young adults are moving back home with their parents after college or just staying longer. And it's becoming much more accepted now, less seen as personal failure, more just economic reality.
And what about caring for elderly parents? That seems like a big difference from cultures where living together is expected.
It is a significant difference. That value of independence really carries through. Older parents often strongly prefer to live on their own, maybe in retirement communities, rather than move in with their adult kids.
So they stay connected, but not usually cohabiting.
Right. Lots of digital connection, visits, family support, but living together in old age is generally the exception, not the cultural rule.
Okay, that paints a picture of independence kind of across the whole lifespan. Let's shift again. What do Americans do for fun? Seems like a lot of screen time, but maybe there's more.
Screens are huge, no doubt. Streaming is dominant. People have multiple subscriptions, Netflix, Hulu, whatever, and binge watching a whole season of a show over a weekend. That's a totally normal thing to do.
But there's an offline world, too.
Oh, absolutely. Live music is massive. Everything from huge stadium concerts down to tiny coffee shop gigs, and music festivals like Coachella, Bonnaroo, they're incredibly popular. It's about the music, but also that community feeling, the shared experience.
And gaming. That's not just for kids anymore.
Not at all. Video gaming is enormous, and the average gamer is actually in their 30s. You've got the whole rise of esports competitive gaming and platforms like Twitch where millions watch other people play. Top streamers are basically celebrities.
Wow, watching others play.
Yeah, it's huge. But interestingly, alongside all the digital stuff, you've also got this big resurgence in board games and tabletop gaming, people getting together face to face. So that desire for real-world interaction is definitely still strong.
And that desire for engagement spills over into civic life too, right? Americans seem quite involved in activism.
Very much so. People are highly engaged with big issues: climate change, racial justice, economic inequality, you name it. And peaceful protest is common. It's seen as a fundamental right protected by the Constitution.
Social media plays a big role there.
A huge role. Hashtag movements like hashtag #MeToo or hashtag Black Lives Matter often explode online first and then drive real-world action and global conversations, though there's always that debate, isn't there?
About slacktivism.
Exactly. Is just posting something online actually meaningful engagement, or does it need to be paired with offline action? And yeah, the country is very polarized politically right now, which can strain relationships. But the underlying idea for many is that civic engagement voting, speaking out, protesting is a core responsibility.
We're also seeing values shift towards the environment, right?
Yeah.
Practical changes.
Definitely, especially among younger people. Reusable water bottles are everywhere now. You see more electric vehicles. Tesla really pushed that forward. And plant-based eating is way more mainstream.
Like Impossible Burgers and things.
Yeah, exactly. You find them everywhere now, driven by health, ethics, environmental concerns. It also fuels the locavore trend, people wanting to buy food grown locally, often at farmers markets.
Okay, so all these changing values, different generations, it must create some tension in the workplace.
Oh, major clashes sometimes. Especially around communication. You've got, say, boomers who might value company loyalty and think a phone call shows respect. Then Gen X, maybe a bit more skeptical, preferring email.
And then millennials and Gen Z?
They often prioritize work-life balance much more, expect to change jobs more frequently, and communicate super fast texts, workplace apps like Slack, even using memes and GIFs in professional contexts.
That must cause friction. Like a millennial trying to manage a project on Slack, while a boomer colleague wants a scheduled phone call because Slack feels too informal.
Exactly that kind of thing. Different expectations about formality, speed, and even loyalty to the company.
And didn't the COVID-19 pandemic just throw gasoline on that fire, accelerate everything?
Absolutely. The pandemic wasn't just a temporary blip. It forced permanent cultural shifts. Remote work suddenly became normal, leading to people moving out of expensive cities, these so-called Zoom towns.
Right.
Public health issues, like wearing masks, became incredibly politicized. But maybe on the positive side, there's been a really noticeable, lasting increase in talking about mental health. It's much less taboo now.
So looking forward, what are the big forces shaping the future, according to the sources?
Two huge ones stand out. Technology, specifically AI and automation, changing jobs and industries. And second, demographics. The U.S. is rapidly becoming more diverse. Projections show there won't be a single racial or ethnic majority group by around 2045.
Wow. That much diversity, plus that level of tech change. Culture is bound to shift dramatically. What's the overall feeling? Optimism? Concern?
It's mixed, honestly. Lots of concern about the polarization, inequality, but you also see that classic American can-do attitude, especially with younger generations who seem really engaged using tech and new movements to try and create change.
Okay, so to kind of boil it down for the listener.
I'd say technology is absolutely core to daily life and how people buy things. Key systems, especially healthcare, are super complex and carry real financial risks. Social ties are diverse, but that value of independence is strong. And getting involved civically is seen as really important.
It sounds like a culture that's dynamic, maybe even contradictory sometimes. But knowing these underlying currents seems like the first step to navigating it.
Definitely. And remember, your own experience will depend so much on where you go, who you interact with, but having this context is like your basic map.
Embrace the contradictions. Stay adaptable.
Adaptability might be the most American trait of all, in a way.
Okay, so as you think about all these huge shifts, the tech, the changing demographics, here's a final thought for you to chew on. With AI and automation growing so fast and the U.S. becoming so much more diverse, What specific new cultural norms might pop up in the American workplace in, say, the next 5 years? Especially around how people communicate and what they expect from work-life balance. How will those two massive forces collide?
That's a good one to ponder.
We'll leave you with that. Catch you on the next Deep Dive.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really getting into the cultural operating system of the United States.
Yeah, not the written laws, right?
Exactly. We're talking about those complex, sometimes contradictory, mostly unwritten social rules. You know, the ones governing everything from your money to your home life.
We've got sources looking at finance, housing, public safety, even social class. All those things people show but don't always talk about.
Right. And our mission today is to kind of pull out those specific, often hidden rules. What defines success? How are you supposed to act?
Especially focusing on how wealth gets displayed versus how it gets discussed or not discussed.
Okay, let's jump right in there. The American money paradox, this idea of show, don't tell. Why is it considered so incredibly rude to ask someone point blank about their salary? Or, how much did that car cost?
Well, it's this fascinating contradiction, isn't it? You're almost expected to display signs of prosperity. The nice car, the designer clothes, those are visible signals.
Signals of success.
Right. But asking about the actual numbers, the finances behind the signals, that's a major social taboo. It's seen as intrusive. Vulnerable, maybe.
So you can show off the result, but not the process or the actual financial health.
Exactly. Yeah. And this creates this environment where everyone's kind of looking over their shoulder. Right?
Yeah, the whole keeping up with the Joneses thing.
Yeah.
That constant pressure to match what you see around you.
And that pressure, according to our sources, really fuels a lot of consumer debt. Many Americans end up living beyond their means.
Using credit cards to bridge the gap.
Very often, yes. Using them not just for convenience, but to project that lifestyle they feel they're supposed to have. Which brings us to something we're calling the credit irony.
Okay, explain the credit irony. It sounds counterintuitive.
It really is. The irony is, to get the things that signal stable adulthood like renting a decent apartment, buying a car, getting a mortgage for a house, you first need to prove you can handle debt.
You need a credit history.
Precisely. The average American, the data shows, has about 4 credit cards. Young people are often specifically advised, believe it or not, to take on some debt early on.
Just to show they can manage it.
Just to build that credit score, yeah. To prove they're trustworthy enough to borrow more later. So success is kind of gated by your ability to manage dependency on debt.
Wow. So it's not just about having money, it's about demonstrating this sort of performative financial responsibility through borrowing. That seems like a recipe for stress.
It definitely can be.
Yep.
And that leads to a pretty stark reality check that often hides behind the consumerism. There was that Federal Reserve study, quite alarming.
The one about emergency expenses?
That's the one.
Yeah.
Found that something like 40% of Americans couldn't cover a $400 emergency expense. Just $400.
That's sobering. It really highlights the gap between the image of prosperity and the financial reality for a lot of people.
Exactly. This system pushes consumption, but the safety net underneath is, well, pretty thin for many. The stress is there, even if it's taboo to talk about the money itself.
And speaking of money exchanging hands, we should probably touch more on tipping culture. It can be really confusing, even for Americans, let alone visitors.
No, absolutely. It's expanded way beyond just restaurants. Now, you're expected to tip hairdressers, taxi drivers, food delivery people, hotel staff, basically anyone providing a personal service.
Right.
A lot of the confusion, and maybe the resentment sometimes, comes from this understanding that the customer is essentially subsidizing the worker's wage. Many are on minimum wage or tipped minimum wage.
It's less a bonus for good service and more of a required part of their income.
In many cases, yes. It's almost a social mechanism to ensure they can earn a living wage, which puts a kind of unspoken burden on the consumer, doesn't it?
Yeah, it makes you a partner in their compensation, whether you like it or not.
Okay, so we've established the financial pressure. Let's talk about the big physical goal that often represents success.
Yeah, the home.
Home ownership. It's so deeply embedded in the culture as the milestone. Stability, achievement, the American dream.
And you hear that saying all the time, renting is just throwing money away.
Exactly. Which puts this huge cultural pressure on people to buy. It subtly positions renters as maybe less successful or somehow temporary.
But as our sources point out, that classic dream is getting harder and harder to reach, isn't it?
Definitely. Home prices have just shot up. much faster than wages in many areas.
Yeah.
So that traditional entry point for the middle class, it's become really difficult.
And the process itself, getting a mortgage, it's complex. You need that big down payment, 10, maybe 20%.
And then you're looking at a 15, or more commonly, a 30-year mortgage commitment. That's a huge chunk of your life dedicated to that debt.
It's practically a life sentence, financially speaking.
And while that single-family home with the yard, the whole white picket fence ideal, is still very powerful culturally.
You're seeing some pushback.
We are, yeah, especially among younger generations. Partly because of the financial burden, they're kind of redefining what successful housing looks like.
This is where we see the rise of alternatives the sources mentioned.
Exactly. Things like tiny homes, co-living spaces, even the whole van life movement.
Which isn't just about saving money, is it? It seems like a deliberate choice.
It often is. It seems to be an active rejection of being tied down spatially and financially by that traditional suburban model. It's choosing mobility, maybe freedom, over that 30-year mortgage.
Okay, shifting from physical space.
Yeah.
Let's talk about time. That core American concept, time is money. How does that play out?
Well, it dictates a lot about daily interactions, especially around punctuality, but it's context dependent.
Right. For business, it's super strict. Being even 5 minutes late for a meeting without calling ahead, that's seen as really disrespectful.
Absolutely. It implies you don't value the other person's time, which, as you said, is seen as money. Wasting their time is wasting their resources.
But then socially, it flips.
It totally flips. For things like, say, a dinner party at someone's house. Arriving maybe 5, 10, even 15 minutes late is often considered polite.
Why is that?
It gives the host those last few crucial minutes to get everything ready. It shows you respect the effort they're putting in as a host. You're not rushing them.
That's a perfect example of the culture valuing efficiency in work, but maybe courtesy or thoughtfulness in social settings. Interesting distinction.
It is. But that focus on professional efficiency might also contribute to what some call the vacation crisis.
Yeah.
The standard 2 weeks of vacation, which is already low compared to many other developed countries.
Right. But the really concerning thing our sources highlight is that many Americans don't even use all the vacation days they're entitled to.
Why on earth not? You'd think people would jump at the chance for time off.
Well, the sources suggest there's this underlying culture of fear, almost. Fear that taking all your vacation will make you look uncommitted, less dedicated, maybe even replaceable.
So the expectation is sort of constant availability, always being on.
Pretty much. It reinforces that idea that your personal time is somehow less valuable than your time spent working. It's a tough cycle. Okay, this high value on labor, time, and order leads us naturally into thinking about safety and civic life. Let's talk about navigating public safety. What about interactions with law enforcement?
Yeah, this is crucial. The sources consistently advise, stay calm, keep your hands visible, be polite.
And if you're driving and get pulled over?
Standard advice is stay in the car unless the officer specifically asks you to get out. Know your rights, to the right to remain silent, the right to an attorney, but you need to assert them clearly and respectfully, not aggressively.
Good points. And it's important to remember, as the sources note, that police interactions and community relations can vary a lot depending on where you are.
Hugely important caveat. It's not uniform across the country.
And related to safety, emergency services, the use of 911.
Yes, the message is clear. 911 is only for immediate, serious emergencies. Life or safety in danger. Think fire, severe medical issues, a crime happening right now.
Not for noise complaints or minor disputes.
Definitely not. Misusing 911 can actually lead to fines. The system is designed for immediate, critical peril. Again, that efficiency focus.
Okay, this brings us to probably the most complex and divisive topic in the sources, gun culture.
Extremely complex and very polarizing. We need to stick to the facts reported in the sources here, impartially.
Right, so factually, about 30% of Americans own a gun. Statistically, there are more civilian-owned guns than people in the U.S.
Correct. And the reasons people cite for owning them are varied. Personal protection is a big one. Also hunting, sport shooting, and exercising what they see as their constitutional rights.
The key thing for anyone navigating the culture is the variability, right?
Absolutely. Gun laws are drastically different from state to state. It's a real patchwork. For instance, open carry, visibly carrying a firearm in public, is legal in some states.
And completely illegal in others.
Exactly. You have to know the local rules. And the cultural impact of widespread gun ownership is undeniable.
You mean things like active shooter drills?
Sadly, yes. The need for active shooter drills in schools, in workplaces. That's become a grim reality that shapes daily life and expectations in public spaces.
Okay, shifting to a more positive civic aspect. The sources also highlight American generosity.
They do. Americans donate a significant amount, around 2% of the GDP goes to charity. And volunteering is also quite common. About a quarter of adults volunteer regularly.
That tradition seems to be evolving with technology, too.
Definitely. We're seeing this huge explosion in crowdfunding platforms like GoFundMe. People use them for very personal causes.
Like medical bills or help after a disaster.
Exactly. It's a form of direct personal giving, which is generous, of course, but it also sometimes highlights where the official social safety nets might have gaps. It turns personal hardship into a public appeal.
That's an interesting point. And finally, under civic life, there's the custom around military service.
Right. Saying thank you for your service to military members or veterans is a very common and generally appreciated gesture.
But there are sensitivities.
Yes, definitely. The advice is don't pry. Don't ask intrusive questions about combat, like asking if they kill anyone.
Okay.
And also, don't just assume someone has PTSD or bring it up. The focus should be on respectful acknowledgement, not on potentially traumatic experiences.
Got it. Respectful recognition. Okay, let's move into our final section, those unwritten rules of social interaction. We've hit money, home, public life. Now, how do people organize themselves socially? Let's start with class.
Yes. The great American illusion of classlessness.
Right. Most Americans, if you ask them, will say they're middle class. They tend to reject the idea of strict social layers.
But class absolutely exists. It's shaped by income, yes, education, job type, but also, critically, by something called cultural capital.
Okay, we need to unpack that term, cultural capital. It sounds academic, but it's really practical, isn't it?
That's hugely practical. It's basically all that non-financial knowledge and behavior that acts as a social marker. It signals where you fit.
Like what kind of things?
It could be knowing about certain types of art or literature, having particular hobbies, your mannerisms, how you speak, the subtle references you make. It's the quiet stuff that reinforces social groups without anyone needing to discuss bank balances.
The quiet gatekeeper.
That's a good way to put it. And this ties into what's considered private information.
Yeah, the list of things you just don't ask about in casual conversation is pretty long.
Very long. Financial details, obviously, medical information, any kind of family drama or conflict, often age, weight, and definitely salary, as we discussed.
Which is such a paradox, isn't it, given how much people might share or curate on social media?
It is a paradox. There's this curated oversharing online versus intense privacy in face-to-face casual talk. And that privacy extends to physical space, too.
Right. Americans tend to prefer more personal space, like an arm's length distance in conversation.
And just dropping by someone's house unannounced, generally considered quite rude. There's that old saying, good fences make good neighbors. People value their private space.
So if conversation about personal stuff is guarded, how do people advance, especially professionally? This leads to networking.
Absolutely essential in American culture.
Right.
There's that blunt saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Connections matter a lot.
And that's why you need the elevator pitch.
Exactly. That quick, polished 30-second summary of who you are, what you do. You need to be ready to sell yourself efficiently at any moment. Time is money, remember.
Right. We're also seeing shifts in gender and identity mentioned in the sources.
Yes. Traditional gender roles are definitely evolving. More stay-at-home dads, more shared childcare responsibilities. It's not universal, but the trend is there.
And alongside that, a growing awareness around gender identity.
Very much so. Especially in professional settings, you see the increasing expectation to share and respect personal pronouns. He, him, she, her, they, them.
It's becoming part of standard professional courtesy.
Increasingly, yes. It signals respect for individual identity.
Okay, one last, maybe lighter, but huge cultural aspect. Pet culture.
Oh yeah, can't forget the pets. It's massive. Americans spend something like $100 billion a year on their pets.
Wow. They really are treated like family members.
Absolutely. Which is why you see more and more pet-friendly places, restaurant patios, sometimes even offices. It's a big indicator of both emotional investment and, frankly, disposable income.
So this has been a really deep dive into America's cultural software, hasn't it? Highlighting these fascinating, often clashing ideas.
Definitely. Displaying wealth, but hiding income. Needing debt to prove you're responsible. The pressure of the dream versus the changing reality of homeownership.
And navigating all these very specific rules about public behavior and safety.
And if you sort of zoom out, all these pieces connect. They show how complex the American experience is. And it's not static, right? It's constantly being shaped by these pressures and by newcomers, by new generations pushing back against old norms. It's very dynamic.
So for you listening, as you navigate these often unspoken rules, here's a final thought to chew on, something that comes out of the source material. If most Americans kind of reject the idea of class, or at least don't talk about it much, how does that subtle stuff, that cultural capital, the mannerisms, the hobbies, the education background, how does that continue to quietly draw lines in society? And what does that hidden structure ultimately mean for the ideal of social mobility, the idea that anyone can rise?
That's a powerful question. Because those unwritten rules, the quiet signals, they often end up speaking much louder than the official stories about equality and opportunity.
Absolutely. Something to think about. We hope these insights help you decode and navigate the complex, fascinating, and sometimes contradictory currents of American culture with a bit more confidence.